On today's show, the San Diego Padres successfully slay the Rangers in their last game of a 3-game set, recapping that game ahead of this D-back series, as well as taking a little bit of a preliminary check into some of the trade targets that a lot of people are talking about for this team heading into the deadline. So, yeah, as always, lots to get into. So, let's, get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, July 5th. Hope everybody enjoyed their July 4th yesterday. As always, I am your host, with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javapeno, the best handle in the game, JAVIIPENO, or if you want only updates on the show and only stuff about the Padres, although I basically all these days pretty much exclusively tweet about the Padres for the most part. You can check out at LO_Padres, and in general, keep an eye on justbaseball.com, where I am a staff writer there, and I'm also hosting a podcast called Baseball vs. the World about evergreen baseball silly funness. You can check that out as well. All the links are in my bio. Y'all know how to use the internet and stuff. Today's episode is brought to you by the legendary, the incredible Booking.com. Yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. In today's episode, we are recapping yesterday afternoon's game, because it was July 4th, you dummy, obviously. We're going to be recapping that, talking a little bit about the D-back series upcoming, just giving a couple thoughts on that. My buddy Miller Thomas is not here this time. I feel like we always preview together that series, but we won't be. But still, we'll look into that a little bit, and then talk about just some interesting trade targets. And I want to talk about not necessarily all of them, because again, I'm going to do an episode when we get a little bit closer to deadline about my dream trade deadline scenarios, and also because we don't know for sure what we're going to hear over the next month or so, right? What if we hear that Darvish is coming back? What if we hear that Musgrove comes back and they look good? That might change some of the outlook on what I personally, and then also the Padres, may want to do at the trade deadline. But first, let's start with yesterday's game. The Padres win this game and the series 2-1, obviously, and they win this one 3-1 because Michael King showed up, continuing to be a steady pitcher who is not giving up too much hard contact, and most importantly, not giving up as many long balls as he was early on in the year. 5 1/3, giving up 1 earned run on 4 hits, 2 walks, 5 Ks. The 1 run was given up after he left, I believe it was 1 out, first and second. They took him out of the game and brought in Estrada, who did give up a single, unfortunately, to allow a run to score. Again, I told you Estrada, I'm hoping that he's finally getting back to it. He does go full, by the way, in this game. He does go 1 2/3, 1 hit, no walks, no Ks though. I'm getting this feeling that maybe we were a little bit too high on Estrada, in the sense of this guy isn't going to be, a top 5 reliever already, right? I think that we got to calm down a little bit. He's still really good. He's still really talented. His story is really fascinating, but I think he needs a little bit of time. But even still, that's not that bad. He still went 1 2/3 and didn't give up anything aside from that 1 hit. Michael King. This guy has been really good for a long time now, and I think that it's worth saying that I was really kind of wrong. I really was. I deserve a lot of flack for that, frankly, because I was just really worried about this guy's velo. I was worried about how inconsistent his pitch mix was. I was worried about his walk rate. Obviously, I was worried about the amount of home runs he gave up, but as some people commented, hey, he was transitioning from the reliever role, long inning reliever role, to a starting pitcher. So maybe it's going to take time. And I think that, as we discussed a few weeks ago, the thing that shows the most that he's still tinkering is the fact that his pitch mix has vacillated a lot this season, depending on the start. And lately, he's been using them a lot more consistently, a lot more of the same amount. He's not favoring necessarily one pitch over the other, all in all, right? In this game, fastball, changeup, and sinker, 27, 25, and 22% respectively, all those pitches, and then the sweeper 18% of the time. Just a lot better of a mix. He got 5 whiffs on his changeup, which I think is just absolutely dominant sometimes, that pitch. His fastball kind of varies, especially because he doesn't have the same velo because he's a starting pitcher now. So every now and then, the fastball isn't great, but he didn't give up too much hard contact in this one. Only 5 2/3 isn't great, but you know what? Especially for a guy converting to starting pitcher, still pretty good, I think, all in all. And he didn't really give up that much hard contact. He did get a little bit lucky on one ground out from Andrew Kinzer that was hit 106.4 miles per hour off the bat. But even still, who cares? Bottom line is he was really solid, and he's been solid for a long time, with the exception of the start against Milwaukee, in which he gave up 5 earned runs on 9 hits. At least in that game, he got 8 strikeouts and got 6 innings, right? So, like, that's, looking at positives, he's just been really solid for a while now. I think he's a really solid number 3. Not the best number 3 in the world, because sometimes he doesn't go the full innings and whatnot, but really solid number 3. The only problem is this team has almost been having to need him to be like number 2 quality because of the Darvish, Musgrove injuries and whatnot. So, whatever, though. Really, really good performance overall. On the Rangers side, Max Scherzer had another good start. 6 1/3, 3 earned runs on 6 hits, 1 walk, 3 Ks. He was just pretty solid in this game. Obviously, he gives up all the runs that the Padres end up scoring, but the Padres are unable to hit like Jose Urena, who's randomly good, apparently, by the way, as a reliever. This has been a guy who's been a disaster. He's got a 2.71 ERA this year. Of course, 66 innings, so I don't know what that is, but Jose Urena, really random. Anyway, that's for all my baseball degenerates who are just, they know about every player and they're fascinated by Jose Urena. But also in this game, let's talk about offense. Luis Arraez, 2 for 4 in this one. Love to see it. We still need him to go on a little bit of like a murder streak. That's what I think Arraez needs. Arraez needs to go on a little bit of like a rampage, I think, is what we're kind of like in the need of. But still, 2 for 4 with 2 singles. Jurickson Profar, 2 for 3 with an RBI. And I want you to guess how the RBI came. A home run. It is the hardest hit ball of the entire night. 107.9 miles per hour off the bat. It was only a home run in 19 out of 30 ballparks, so I will say that did help a little bit. It looked more of like a line drive, but it was still the hardest hit ball of the day, so that's great. We love you so much, Profar. Congratulations on the All-Star selection. A home run on July 4th against your former team? Come on, man. And it's not like the Rangers were silly for giving up on him. I mean, for a while, it looked like they were right to give up on him, right? But good stuff. Good stuff from Jurickson Profar hitting a home run in this one. Donovan Solano, also a hero in this one. He goes 3 for 4 with an RBI, 2 doubles in this one. His batting average is up to 296, OPS at 769. He's walking. He's not going to hit for a ton of power, but he can lace a double every now and then. He can draw some walks, and he's going to be just a hitter. He's kind of like a better version of Luis Arraez in a lot of ways, like in that regard. Like, he has been better than him in some ways, especially because I don't think he's as libelous on defense, although they don't necessarily need to use him on defense because he was at DH this time. But I'm just saying, I feel like he's been pretty good in that regard. No stolen bases for the Padres today, despite, you know what I mean? Like, they've been, they stole a crap ton of bases yesterday. No stolen bases for them today. But all in all, Tyler Wade got a start. He goes 1 for 3. That's nice. Again, I want to just emphasize, I was mad at how they were using Tyler Wade and how they were using Graham Pauley. I think Tyler Wade is a solid bench piece, and I think in late games that might come in handy to have this spark plug speed guy. So shouts to him. Brett Sullivan, he goes 0 for 4, unfortunately. I was kind of hoping he would do something, but he doesn't. It's fine. 0 for 4 in this game with a strikeout. But yeah, I mean, and Merrill goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. It's fine. He did have a bad moment, unfortunately, with runners on base. He did have a strikeout. They weren't able to add on to the insurance. But thankfully, Robert Suarez is a god, getting the save, getting the lockdown save in this one once again. Has he only blown 1 save this year? I feel like he's only blown 1, and he's just been so much better. And I was really optimistic about him heading into the year because I was optimistic about him last year because my thing was, all right, they're extending him because he's going to cost less than Hader, and he has been. 1.05 ERA on the year, 21 saves, fastball galore. Yes, he gives up a walk in this one. But he does get a strikeout. I don't think he's this guy that's going to be 1.02 ERA good for the rest of the year. But considering how good the Padres have been lately, considering how good their offense is, that might not matter. That's the beauty of it, right? Like, he's given up runs, obviously. And when they've come, it's been like, oh, well, we had a 4-run lead, so it's okay. Stuff like that. And I just love Suarez. I love that the team clearly loves him. It's not a coincidence that they all made those comments about, oh, it's nice to have a closer who will, go in a non-save situation, or a closer that'll go more than 3 outs. Like, they clearly love him. They've got respect for him, and that's a big thing. He's been so instrumental to this team's success. And also Adrian Morejon, 2.39 ERA. We got to talk about him. While he still has this vibe that isn't always supported by numbers, because the numbers show you that his stuff is amazing and it is significantly better than basically every year he's been here, there's still a vibe if you're a Padres fan where you're like, I don't trust him. You know what I mean? Now, you still have to go with him because he's still probably the second best overall reliever in your bullpen, especially with Estrada having that awful June. He's still probably the second best overall guy, but I mean, still, he's great. I do worry about him in certain games, maybe a playoff game. But regardless, Morejon, man, he's been key too. A lot of guys stepping up this year. That's what you need to be a good team, which the Padres seem to be. We're going to keep talking about them in just a second and talk about this D-backs series. But first, I want to talk to y'all about one of the greats, ladies and gentlemen, because when it comes to the summer, guess what you're often doing? You're often traveling. You're often going to Barcelona. You're going to Italy. You're going to, in my case, maybe Boston, right? Whatever it is, Booking.com is what you should try out. Booking.com, Booking.yeah, specifically with summer heating up, especially travel for the baseball games. If you're a baseball fan, you know everyone wants to visit the various stadiums. Booking.com can help you accomplish that bucket list adventure, I guess we'll call it, with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay, including in your baseball rivals city. Go check it out, guys. They've got plenty of good stuff over at Booking.com to help you plan everything you need for your trip, from hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts, whatever. Like if you've got kids you got to worry about, they've got you covered in that regard too. The right stay can make you a fan of any city. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. Go check it out. But we're not done just yet, folks. I want to take a second to talk about an OG from the Locked On sponsor family, and that is our friends over at eBay. We love eBay. Patience, drive, and passion. That's what you need to win a championship, and the same goes for your vehicle, folks. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, the air, what are those tree things that you hang in cars, the mints? I don't know if they have those, but they have a lot of stuff, right? They've got new carpet, they've got exhaust kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one vehicle, your number one ride or die. They've got you covered. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed, obviously, to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep it all alive. Keep it all together. Keep driving with ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Go check it out. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. Great series win for the Padres, especially how it started. I think that matters. Like, I try on this podcast to also reflect how I think fans feel. And I think that they felt like, oh no, we just beat the Brewers, right? Like, we just beat some really good teams. We beat the Red Sox pretty badly. What do they usually do? They follow it up with a sweep. And how do they start off? They start off with Dylan Cease getting absolutely obliterated. Allegedly our best pitcher, who has not been showing it lately, although I do have optimism in him. And then you lose 0-7. Then you have, the big game on Tuesday. Or, hold on Wednesday, 6-4 win. David Peralta, of all people, stepping up. I just love that this team seems to have new heroes every day. Last year, it felt very much like you're going to have to hope that Soto steps up. You're going to have to hope that Tatis steps up, right? And that they drive in all the runs, because you knew that you couldn't trust your Bogarts, your Mannys, your Grishams, Cronenworths when he was, I know he didn't play the full season, but Cronenworths, your Nelson, remember Nelson Cruz, Matt Carpenter? There's just so much better on this team, and it's incredible. And by the way, your boy was right. I just want to give a little bit of credit. I was wrong about Michael King, but I told you, this Padres lineup is deeper. It just is. It is so much deeper than last year. And that, by the way, was before the Luis Arraez acquisition, right? Even before that, my thing was, this is better. Campusano's an upgrade over Nola. Remember, Nola had he started 60 games for us or whatever last year, and he was not very good. So shouts to him, I guess. But yeah, and it's also, they are a little bit lucky on the Donovan Solano thing. I don't know why that guy wasn't signed. It's not like, I understand he's old, but his last season he hit. All he's done is hit for a few seasons. So I'm just shocked that there isn't a team out there that went and signed him and said, let's try and have this guy as one of our DHs, whatever. I just didn't get it. But that tells you a lot about baseball and overspending, right? JD Martinez didn't get signed for a long time, and he's been great with the Mets, right? So this just shows you a lot. Would I rather have JD Martinez over Donovan Solano? Maybe a little bit, just because there's more power there. But regardless, the Padres did it with a low cost acquisition, which is what I think makes him so exciting. And what makes this team so exciting. Currently on the year, their offense still up there with the best. They are second in batting average, sixth in on-base percentage, eighth in runs scored, ninth in home runs, and 10th in slugging percentage. So they're not necessarily the best overall, but that batting average, that might show you why this team is so fun to watch, even when sometimes they're losing, because you know you're always getting hits. And I think that that's really fun to watch overall, right? So this has just been an amazing team, and I am ecstatic about just how well this team plays, right? Everyone keeps telling me it's much more fun last year, because it's true. It's much more fun to watch a bad pitching but have a great offense than it is great pitching versus a good offense. Just ask the Mariners fans. They're winning 2-1 games like every night. You know what I mean? So really great stuff. In terms of this next series against the Diamondbacks, it's a big one, obviously. It is a rivalry series. I mean, this is the type of series that you need to make sure you don't get swept, right? Let's be careful of that. You need to play well. You're in Petco. You're going to have the City Connects on tonight. You got to show up. And it's not a bad pitching matchup. At least not as bad as you would think, because while, yes, Randy Vasquez is on the mound, great to see that he's on the mound, by the way, going against Slade Ciccone, who's been quite bad this year, 5.81 ERA, but a 1.26 whip, which is enticing for some reason to me. I don't know. I don't know much about this guy other than when I look at his overall numbers, he has been a little bit better lately, 4 earned runs in his last 13 innings. That's not too bad, but he's been getting absolutely blown up by some teams you wouldn't expect. And the Padres even hit him pretty well last time, except that they only got 3 runs off 7 hits. So they just didn't hit as well with runners in scoring position, but they have been able to do that this year. That's the Friday game. Saturday's start is going to be our man, our God, Matt Waldron versus Brandon Pfaadt. That's a little bit closer of a matchup, in my opinion. I think that while, yes, Brandon Pfaadt's got a 4.2, I still think he can be solid. And in Matt Waldron, you know, we've seen that it's still possible that he has, bad starts every now and then. But Waldron has been such a success story. And again, I don't think the regression is going to happen for a little bit. I think this is the type of guy where it might take time, because teams are just like, what the heck is this? We're not used to seeing sweeper knuckleball combos, right? Like, that just must be such a weird matchup. So I'm curious to see how the D-backs, who have played us before, maybe how they perform against Matt Waldron, considering like I said, they've seen him before. So that'll be interesting. I'm very excited about that. And then for the Sunday matchup, you've got easily the best, not the best, I'm sorry, easily the most interesting of the starts, which is Ryan Nelson, who hasn't been very good for the D-backs, versus Dylan Cease. Yes, the Padres are very lucky that they're catching the D-backs before any of the rotation, the top of the rotation, gets healthy. Obviously, Jordan Montgomery's on the IL. Eduardo Rodriguez is on the IL. Merrill Kelly, I'm pretty sure, is gone for the year. So, yes, the D-backs, if you're someone who's thinking, I told you they would regress, it's like, yeah, sure, but also a lot of ridiculous things have happened to them, namely with Corbin Carroll going from a fringe MVP candidate, rookie of the year type guy, to being genuinely, like, pretty useless. Not trying to be mean, but like, he's been really, really bad this year. But also it's that Jordan Montgomery, Merrill Kelly, and Eduardo Rodriguez have all been hurt, right? So that's a big part of this, because in terms of their offense, they're not bad. They're 9th in runs scored, 5th in on-base percentage, 7th in batting average, 11th in slugging, 15th in home runs, which is great. Like, to me, this D-backs team, I think that they are not out of it. And even if the Padres sweep them this weekend, I don't think they're going to be out of it. I think they'll be players at the deadline. It depends how the health of Eduardo Rodriguez and Jordan Montgomery are, right? Because if they don't have those guys and they're having to rely on your Ciccones and your Ryan Nelsons and whatnot, I think that's going to be the problem. But I'm just saying, D-backs, not a bad team offensively, so we're going to have to get a really good start out of Dylan Cease on Sunday, right? We really need you to show up and not be as dreadful as you've been lately. Not necessarily ace level, what he did against the Nationals. You don't need to do that, but he just needs to stop being as bad as he's been for a while now. I still think that there's a middle ground between his early season performance and current performance that is going to show up perhaps after the All-Star break. Like, genuinely, maybe he needs a break. We'll see, though. We'll see overall, but that's my warning to everybody. The D-backs are not out of it. It's still a good team. And considering that Corbin Carroll has been as bad as he's been and they still have an effective offense, that just shows you it's just really weird for them. They're not hitting with runners on base as much as they were last year, I don't think. But Christian Walker is a problem, for those unfamiliar. So I am a little bit worried about the Matt Waldron matchup against him, because Christian Walker has been unbelievable. If you haven't been following, he's almost becoming famous for how much he owns the Dodgers. He has like 6 home runs in his last 3 games at Dodger Stadium, and he has the most of any player over like the last 3 years at Dodger Stadium. That's like insane. Him and Ketel Marte, and then Jock Peterson is still really good. Jake McCarthy is a solid player. Corbin Carroll, again, has been dreadful. 77 WRC plus on the season. That's nuts. To go from a guy who gave you a 133 WRC plus in 155 games last year and then a 131 the previous year to have a 77 this year is really, really nuts, guys. Like, I can't emphasize enough, like, if you're a D-backs fan, it must be driving you insane. It just must be. But this is still a good team. I'm just really happy that if the D-backs do come around, that they don't have Jordan Montgomery, they don't have Eduardo Rodriguez. They've just gotten really unlucky with that. And as a result, yes, their pitching numbers are bad, but it's justified, right? ERA, they're 29th in Major League Baseball. Batting average against their 29th, and whip, they're 27th. So really bad, and I'm happy we're playing them now, because if we play them later, they might have their better pitching back. So we'll see what happens. But all in all, do not take this team for granted. They still have a really, really solid team with batters galore. So hopefully the Padres can make up for it. We're going to need some really good starts from Matt Waldron and Dylan Cease this weekend. Really going to need that. Randy Vasquez, I'm expecting tonight to be a bit of a shootout, right? It might be a bit of a shootout. And if it is, that would be a blast, honestly. Let's be real. Shootouts are fun. And I trust our offense in a shootout. So we'll see how it plays out. But until then, we shall conquer the Diamondbacks. We shall conquer this division. We shall conquer all of baseball, folks. Keep the faith. But we're not done yet, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to take a little bit of a last segment to talk about some trade targets, right? I don't know why. Just some early ideas, some early potential guys that I think we should just keep an eye on for now, what I feel about them, and there's some of the popular ones too. I'm not going to talk about Crochet. That's the only one I won't talk about because I feel like we've talked about him a lot on this podcast. I feel like he's been talked about a lot before, so we won't talk about him, but we will talk about some folks. Who am I going to mention? Are there going to be some under the radar guys, maybe? Is Javi going to be a little hipster with it? Maybe I am. You'll have to stay tuned, folks. But first, I want to take a second to talk to you about the lovely folks from a lovely, lovely company, folks. And they're the ones that help you because year-round, I'm helping you. I'm giving you Padres information. I'm giving you the latest news, almost always. I'm giving you all my opinions every day. But folks, just like Locked On Padres, you know what else is year-round? Tax collection season, folks. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let them target you. You don't want that to happen. So, with over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA is here to help you as they've saved over $1 billion in tax debt of their many, many clients. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And also at checkout, if you mention Locked On Padres at checkout, you'll receive a $250 discount for their services. 250 buckaroos, guys, just for listening to me. How amazing is that? So go check that out, guys. tnusa.com/lockedon. We love you, Tax Network. And then also, I want to take a second to talk about, who am I talking about? Let's see here. Oh, that's right. I forgot. We love this. It is a great thing that also is giving you free money in return, folks. And that is the lovely folks over at Ibotta. If you're planning on going to the beach and you need new sandals, you just realize, oh my God, I didn't think about this. You know, you don't go to the beach every day, right? So then you're looking around and your sandals, they're all messed up and you're like, gosh, dang it. Man, I got to go get new sandals. I got to get new equipment. I got to get new umbrellas. I got to get new swimsuits, whatever it is. And maybe just some food, whatever, because, you know, maybe you have kids. You want to give them snacks when they're on the beach because the beach is, let's just be real, it's not fun. Let's just be honest with you. Just deliver a hot take in the middle of an ad read for you. But in all seriousness, guys, whatever it is, you need some assistance and Ibotta is there for you. It is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop, earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies and even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. It's really great. The average Ibotta user earns up to $256 per year. So, hey, whatever it's not up to. There's more than that you can earn with Ibotta, but on average, that's what you're saving. And that can cover a bunch of things, whether it's your beach trip, whether it's just a bunch of tickets to, I don't know, travel across the country, whether it is a Padres game, Ibotta can help you out. That makes a big difference. You could save You could save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and a lot more. Right now, Ibotta is also offering listeners $5 just for trying the app and using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download it for free, the Ibotta app, to start earning cash back, and use that code LOCKEDONMLB for the nice bonus buckaroos. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. Go check it out. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, as I almost clicked the intro again, we are back here, thriving and vibing as always on the Locked On Padres podcast. Let's talk about just a few trade guys that I want to keep everyone talking about, I guess, for lack of a better word. There's a lot. So here's the thing. I do think another big part of this is what exactly is going on with the Padres' health. What's happening with Bogaerts? What's happening with Tatis? If Tatis is out for a while, do they need to go out and get someone different? Probably, right? You probably need to go out there and see if you can get another bat in exchange. I don't know exactly how that would work roster construction-wise, but if Tatis is going to be out well after, which is what he said, after the All-Star break, what if this guy's back in like September? Right? So if that's the case, there are some outfielders out there. Randall Grichuk is a name that I want to throw out there. He's just kind of been hanging around for years, right? Now, this also depends on if the Diamondbacks become sellers, which isn't impossible. I personally don't think that they will because of all the things I mentioned in the previous segment, but even still, 120 WRC plus this year. He's slashing 287, 343, 434 on base. I like the idea of just having a guy in there who's just a hitter, right? Like, that's not too bad. He hasn't played, too many games necessarily this year, only 55, but I don't know. That's just not too bad. He's not killing you defensively all that much, and he'll probably cost next to nothing. And that's assuming, by the way, that the Diamondbacks would be selling. But it's also an in-division trade, so I highly doubt it would happen. So I'm just mentioning guys I think are going to be interesting because the theme for, I think, this deadline is there's a lot of players that are available, in my opinion, that are interesting, that will not cost as much, not necessarily game-changing stars. But if you're like a team that just has holes, I think this is going to be an actually really interesting trade deadline. I think Randall Grichuk could be an interesting player for some teams to be like, all right, maybe righty-lefty, we could do something like that. Some other ones, Taylor Ward is he still on the Angels? Hold on. Is he still on the Angels? He is, right? Taylor Ward, I think, is going to be an interesting player. He is an outfielder at this point, so if you want to bring in him, 109 WRC plus this year, 239, 319, 424 slash line, but that's not too bad. And also, I think he actually has a little bit of upside. And in terms of in the outfield this year, 3 defensive runs saved, -1 and outs above average. He's not killing you defensively. That might be a guy to look out for. Mike Tauchman of the Chicago Cubs. Now, I do think that everyone on the Cubs is about to be available. I think including your Cody Bellingers. The problem is that with the per year, maybe he's just a rental. I don't fully know I don't know what his trade value is, but Mike Tauchman, he could be an interesting guy. 117 WRC plus this year. Really solid player. He could be, see what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of solid players, right? There's not a lot of stars. Obviously, you have your Luis Roberts. You have everyone's going to talk about Jazz Chisholm, who I think is a little bit overrated, but whatever. Everyone's going to talk about your, your Garrett Crochets. Everyone's going to talk about those guys, Pete Alonso's, people along that nature. But I think there's a lot of minor players that can make an impact for this Padres team. And I know that bats aren't the biggest thing, but I'm just mentioning some. Jesse Winker of the Nationals. Now, maybe we won't be able to make any trades with them, given that we hate them now, Nationals. But 131 WRC plus. By the way, I was high on Jesse Winker heading into the year. But of course, I'm thrilled that they didn't do that. We have Profada. But if you want to bring him in, not going to be a plus defensively. He's going to be awful there, but he's hitting so well this year, 131 WRC plus, that I think it's worth looking into. Maybe you could stick him in right field for a little bit if you want to. Again, maybe you send down another player if you have the depth for it. If Tatis is going to be out for a long time, I'd rather not only rely on your, Bryce Johnson and David Peralta, right? Those guys just don't look like they have it. And in general this year, yes, His righty-lefty split is there. Still, this has been a problem for him for his whole career. But 103 WRC plus against lefties versus 143 against righties. That's not as drastically bad as his platoon splits have also often been, right? So there's just some bats to keep an eye on, right? And there's plenty more, right? There's plenty more other players out there that I think are going to be interesting. I mentioned Taylor Ward already. Shane Langeliers, who's been discussed on this podcast before. If the Padres decide, you know what, we're really going for it, and we don't think Campusano's the guy, maybe you trade for Shea Langeliers. Solid defense and hits for a lot of power. Not much else, but really solid defense behind the dish. So maybe that's a guy to go for. I think it depends on how they feel about, one, Campusano, and two, Higashioka. I don't think Higashioka is going to keep this up. I think he had like a Linsanity run with all the power lately, but he at minimum is going to be a good defensive player. And I think more importantly, he's better as a backup catcher. So I do think considering your Shea Langeliers is an interesting idea for the Padres. Although they haven't discussed it, there's been no rumors about this. I still think it's worth looking into because Campy scares me, man. You got to be really good to make up for the bad defense that he has. So we'll see. We'll see. But I know what everybody is really talking about, which is pitching. Of course, I'm always going to be tuning the horn of Eric Feed of the Detroit Tigers, who I think is going to be infinitely less appetizing. I feel like no one's talking about him. He hasn't been that good before. This season, I understand, but this year so far, he's been really, really solid, and I think that he deserves a lot of credit and a lot more attention. 3.13 ERA this year, 3.58 FIP, 3.76 xFIP. His strikeout rate isn't incredible, but still, he's not giving up too much, and he does, what's the word? He does get a lot of ground balls, so I think that he could be an interesting guy, and he doesn't cost too much either, right? This is a guy who signed a 2-year, $15 million contract. He'll be out next year. I just think that could be solid. Yes, if you want to worry about next year and say, is this going to be one of those guys we're forced to keep on another year, like that we'll have some trouble with? Maybe, but I'm all for it. I think he's an interesting option. I think Cal Quantrill, everyone's been talking about him. For him to be doing what he's doing in Colorado, just being a solid starter, I think says a lot, especially at Coors Field. Patrick Sandoval. When is this guy getting traded? Is that ever going to happen? Are the Angels finally going to trade this guy? I feel like this guy has been a trade deadline target for like a long time. And I know that it might freak you out when I say that. He does have a 5.08 ERA. But if you just need to fill innings, you could do worse than Patrick Sandoval, right? If you just want cheap options, his expected stats are better. 4.18 ERA, FIP of 3.86, 3.97 xFIP. If you just want to fill innings and your thing is we just got to have someone better than Mazer, that's not a bad option to look into. Yusei Kikuchi is another one. And I think that he's been gaining a little bit more traction lately. I don't know if he's under the radar anymore, but this year so far, 4.12 ERA, 4 expected ERA, 3.6 FIP, 3.41 xFIP. Very similar. Difference between him and Sandoval is more strikeouts and a little bit better of a resume, I think. So Kikuchi, another guy who could be a rental. He is a free agent after this year, which is great. $12 million right now, but that's totally okay, right? I assume that's okay for this team. I assume that ownership is not going to be like, you can't get this player because they cost too much for just 1 year. I don't think we're the Rockies. I don't think we're one of those dumb teams that decide, like the A's, that because for 1 year we're going to have to pay this guy. We can't do it. So whatever. We'll see how that goes. That's a name to keep an eye on. Jack Flaherty is another one. I think he's too high profile to be considered under the radar. I just think he's, former top prospect. And he hasn't just been good. He's been elite. He's been low-key like a Garrett Crochet type of guy so far this year for the team. 33% strikeout rate and a 3.05 FIP. I think his walk rate is actually so down that I don't totally believe it. But he also has a high home run fly ball rate, by the way. Which you think that that's a bad thing, but I think that tells you that he might have some positive regression, especially if he's striking out batters as much as he's doing. That means that they've just been happening to hit home runs whenever they finally hit him. So he could be a guy and also a rental for $14 million. Another guy, him and Kikuchi both. I think both of them could be good. I like Flaherty's character. I think he's got an edge to him. I don't know. I like that guy, though, and he's been very good before. So it looks like while it has taken... He's having like a Cody Bellinger season. A guy who was a Cy Young candidate 1 year, rookie of the year, high value prospect, all that, then just was trash for like 3 years because his arm was like blown out, and his arm doesn't appear to be blown out now. So Jack Flaherty, keep an eye on him. He's going to be great for whatever team gets him. And yes, the Tigers are going to sell. And then lastly, some relievers. Kyle Finnegan of the Washington Nationals again. This guy's been good for a couple years now. He'd probably cost a little bit more than some other relievers on the market, like some other low-key ones. But even still, this year, been solid. And by the way, he's been solid for a while. So if you're worried, could be okay. 1.98 ERA this year. His expected stats have that regressing a little bit. So if you're a fan of just like not wanting to bring in, how do I put this? If you just don't want to put someone who's expected to be worse on the Padres and you want to go for guys who are expected to get better, change it up a little bit. Because, Preller, he tends to buy high on people. Maybe you don't go Kyle Finnegan. Instead, I'd like to point you to another undervalued guy. Carlos Estevez of the Los Angeles Angels becomes a free agent after this year. He's 31 years old, so, okay. Not like he's super young or anything like that. The Angels might not want to keep him. What I think is interesting about him is he's got a 3 ERA, and his expected stats are actually better. 2.4 expected ERA and a 2.94 FIP. That is intriguing. And his strikeout rate has actually gotten better these last 2 seasons. 27.8% last year, 27% this year, and a walk rate of just 3% this year. Is that fluky? Maybe. Is his home run fly ball rate a little bit low? Maybe, but it was also low last year, and that didn't impact him. So I like Carlos Estevez. I think that could be a guy that you go out and help just replace your Kolek, just the bottom tier relievers on this team that you don't really like. Wandy Peralta has been a disaster. Maybe you could go out and get this guy. I would look into him. I like him. I like him a lot. I like Estevez a lot. There's plenty of other ones out there. Kenley Jansen might even go on the market at some point. That'd be funny, though, right? Padres getting Kenley Jansen, face the Dodgers in the playoffs. He does well, right? Ooh, that would be fun. I almost want him just for that scenario. I think that'd be great. But those guys are just some potential players for the Padres to look out for. Jameson Taillon's another one who could potentially fill innings for you. I really think that this is going to be a deadline with a lot of guys that can fill what the Padres need, what a lot of teams need, and it just won't cost as much. There's not the stars that we're used to being talked about at the deadline, unless, say, the Blue Jays really decide to go nuts and sell everybody, the Mets decide to sell on Pete Alonso, stuff like that. I think this deadline's going to have a lot of enticing, intriguing role players, many of which I didn't even get to talk about today. But that's it for now, everybody. Again, preliminary trade discussions, folks. But with all that being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Look forward to next week's podcast where we're going to be recapping, obviously, this D-back series. And then, of course, send me your questions. Monday will be the mailbag episode at Javipeno, Javiipeno, or at @L_Padres, or Locked On Padres on YouTube. I will be reading them comments. A lot of fun, guys. Keep the faith. And I hope everybody had a good July 4th, and I hope you have a great July 4th, semi-July 4th, ostensibly July 4th weekend. Until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies. Take care.